I'm not smart enough to explain to you why a big red button plonked in the middle of a room, preferably with a huge "do not press, for the love of God, do not press" message written on it, is so damn appealing. There's something just innately satisfying about pressing something you're not entirely sure the function of, or being told to not press something and then going right ahead and doing it anyway just to stick it to the man. We've covered the buttons you absolutely should not push but totally did in a list before, but this time I'm championing the video game buttons, levers or tiles that you should take glee in activating. They might shower you in gifts or they might drop you into a surprise encounter, but either way they're going to improve your gaming experience massively. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game buttons you really should press. Number 10. The mysterious button, Mass Effect Andromeda. On the whole, Mass Effect Andromeda isn't a good game, but it does have some moments of greatness that remind you of just how much you enjoyed the previous installments. One such instance is actually a direct callback, and concerns a quote-unquote mysterious button that you can find while completing the Collective Base side mission during your time in Draulia. You'll come across a terminal with a nearby Solarian scientist who seems extremely concerned by your presence. Obviously, you're not going to give up on the chance of finding out what the hell this mystery button actually does though, so you'll press it only to find nothing happens. It turns out to be broken, and rather than anything happening, you instead get a telling off from the scientist. If you keep on pressing the button, however, he will get increasingly antsy, pleading with you to stop messing around with the terminal. Eventually, he just starts chastising the character and the player for pressing it and expecting something to happen like a thresher maw popping out the ground. Finally, he teases you by saying that every time you press the button, there's a 50-50 chance a prisoner in the next room dies of an electric shock. Still, that's not going to stop you, is it? Number 9. Elevator Operator Half-Life. One of the most appealing parts of the original Half-Life was just how interactive and immersive its world was. Sure, there had been plenty of first-person shooters with interactive objects before, but for the most part they were simply doors or key items. Valve's game, on the other hand, let you turn on microwaves and flip buttons that had no bearing on the plot, but were fun little distractions nonetheless. Some stood out more than others though, and a couple even paid off in future games. One is an elevator that you need to progress through once the facility you're in goes tits up. Here you have two choices: either smash the glass and make your way through, or press the button and go through the doors. Whatever you do, you'll see the elevator itself plummet to the ground with a bunch of NPCs inside screaming before they die. If you smash the glass, you'll have a guilt-free conscience as you probably couldn't have caused it, but if you press the button, you won't be able to shake the feeling that you just sent these people to their deaths. Number 8. The big all-star button, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. It might not be the best kart racer of its time, but Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing was still damn good fun, especially if you were a fan of the wealth of Sega and Sonic characters crammed into it. It hit all the beats you'd expect of a game just like it: guest characters, reimagined levels as tracks, and, of course, signature power-ups to give you an edge in the race. In a twist though, and in reference to the title, the game has all-star power-ups unique to each character that essentially function as ultimate moves which allow you to dominate for a short period. Eggman of course has one of these as well, which sees him pressing a button on his racer and transforming it into a formidable tank that fires rockets. Sometimes the announcer will even warn the other racers that everyone's favourite egg scientist has pressed his red button for added effect. Number 7. How can you resist? Zero Escape 3 Zero Time Dilemma. What's better than a big red button, I hear you all ask? Well, a big blue button, of course, and fortunately for us, Zero Escape 3 Zero Time Dilemma is one of the few games to feature one of these items. The visual novel follows a bunch of people who have been kidnapped and are forced to play the decision game, where different teams are ushered through challenges with deadly consequences for failure. It's a great concept, but no Saw-like trap would come without a should you press the mystery button dilemma. This comes during the healing room section, where the player gets to decide if they want to hit the great big button sitting in the room. You should though, because then you'll be treated to one of the most memorable endings in the game. Whack the button and the scene cuts to outside of the facility as the whole thing is destroyed in a huge explosion. Hey, I suppose that at least means the game's over and nobody else can die in more horrific ways? Yeah? Number 6. Pay Respects, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. While most of the entries on this list are actual tangible buttons that you have to click inside a game world, it would be unfair to not go a bit meta with the concept and not include an example of the actual buttons players are pressing on their controller. Even better, this particular example is one of the most infamous button presses in gaming history. Hell, even if you're not familiar with Call of Duty, you will have no doubt seen the meme spawn from this moment on the internet. The button in question comes during a funeral scene in Advanced Warfare, where the main character military man is encouraged to press F to pay respects for his fallen comrade. Though the developers no doubt had good intentions with the moment, trying to wring every bit of emotion out the cutscene as possible, it only ended up highlighting how ridiculous blockbuster games had gotten. Still, you have to do it, don't you? I mean, straighten up soldier, press F, and mourn the loss of your friend. Number 5, Laser Control System Shock. A good chunk of System Shock revolves around the player figuring out the right way to press the laser button that's sitting so tantalizingly in a control room. The idea is that the series' signature villain Shodan wants to destroy the big cities on Earth via a huge laser, which, now I say it out loud, actually just pretty much sounds like a plot Dr. Evil would come up with. Anyway, your role, obviously, is to stop all of this death and destruction from happening. And you actually find the button to activate the laser firing quite early on, and you can even press it right there and then, essentially doing Shodan's job for her. She'll even congratulate you on speeding up her destructive plan. That alone makes it eligible for this list. But your role isn't just to press the button, but to press it smartly. You need to find some instructions and codes across a bunch of other levels so you can safely fire the machine, ruin Shodan's plans, and most importantly, not destroy humanity when you click it. Number 4, Self-Destruct Deus Ex Human Revolution. For the most part, if an RPG had an ending where you literally decided the future by simply pressing a button and watching the final cutscene, it would be deemed a failure. Yet when that very same thing happened in Deus Ex Human Revolution, it served to make that final decision really feel like a true game changer. In the final mission, you're tasked with shutting down a signal, with the player making their way to a set of terminals, each with a unique message that you can distribute. Though it sounds simple, each one of these changes the world in radically different ways depending on the ideology of whichever person you decided to support. While all of these endings are interesting in their own right, it's actually a secret fourth one that's a bit more exciting. Instead of pressing one of these 3 buttons, you can choose none of them, and opt for a hidden big red button on the way out that will blow up the facility you're in. Sure, you might get caught in the crossfire, but it's a great way to stick a middle finger up to everyone and do your own thing. Number 3. Do not press this button. World of Warcraft. During an Ulduar raid in World of Warcraft, you and your party will encounter Mimiron, a boss who's already going to be tough even before you take my advice and make it even tougher. If you explore his arena, you'll find a button, one that comes with a note suggesting that you do not press this button, but the problem is, this is the biggest, reddest button you will ever see. It's literally bigger than your character, so of course you're going to have to press it to see what happens. Well, initially anyway, it won't be anything good. In fact, it starts the self-destruct timer for the base and sets fire to parts of the level, making your life much more difficult in the process. Even worse, it'll just piss Mimiron off, who will criticize you for pressing it and then gain a buff in damage. The one plus side to this though is that if you do manage to beat the boss within the newfound time limit and best these extra obstacles trying to kill you, you'll nab yourself extra rewards for your trouble. Whether it's worth it, I can't say, but it will certainly earn you some bragging rights. Number 2, solve the puzzle, please don't touch anything. There's no way I could write a list about in-game buttons you need to press without mentioning perhaps the world's only button-pushing simulator. And yeah, I suppose all games are in a way button-pushing simulators, but wait, you'll get my point in a second. Please Don't Touch Anything launched on Steam back in 2015 and has a pretty simple premise. The whole point is that you control someone covering for a co-worker on a toilet break, yeah I know, we've all been there, only to get locked in a room with the terminal they've been instructed to not touch, hence the title. Of course, the only way to escape the room is to mess around with this terminal, which also just happens to have a big red button right in the center of it. Despite the big sign right there warning you not to do it, you need to survey the environment and figure out what the terminal does and how to use it, which is way more challenging than you think. So, go ahead, push those buttons, push them until your heart's content and hopefully get out of there. Number 1, The Office, The Stanley Parable. The Stanley Parable made its name being the most subversive meta video game anybody had played when it first came out. Its entire point came in satirizing the implicit and explicit rules all video games, and by extension all players, stick to. Guessing your actions before you did them, purposefully sidelining your expectations, and leading you to a bunch of different endings that all didn't really matter. One of these is the apartment ending, which sees Stanley and the player trying to escape the hell the narrator of the game has put them in, ending up in a strange version of his apartment and out of the office the game starts in. Though he thinks he's returned to his wife, this turns out to be a mannequin, and every time the player pushes the button prompts on the screen, the area transforms even more into the office. The narrator then again chastises you for trying to play the game and escape by constantly pressing the buttons, and reminds you that you're here forever, trapped in Stanley's imagination. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you push all of these buttons, and are there any examples I missed off here? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.